I didn't like it. Call me biased, call me disingenuous, call me stuck in nostalgia. But I did just revisit these games with a 2-decade-long break, so this whole return to the series of mine was a completely fresh experience. And those fun on mixed versions were perfect to help out with that. And don't have to tell you, but one and two are top tier because of their ARPG goodness, cozy moments, memorable music, handcrafted level designs, and well thought out enemies and bosses to put all those elements to use in some way. All around, there are amazing games with a lot to offer. But once I got to 3, it was an instant nosedive in quality. The difference was such a whiplash it kinda hurt. So this is combat overview. Here we go over the general controls, the main mechanics, who or what we use them on, and then seeing how it all comes together. First thing I noticed is how unresponsive Sora feels just to move. There's transition animations that just bog down immediate gameplay we've known since KH1. He'll do these wide motions just to turn, while KH1 and 2 nailed the responsive controls from the beginning, but not here. There's a bit of a disconnect, which leads to that delayed feeling. Actually, you know what it feels like? I'm not controlling Sora, but rather pointing or pulling him in a certain direction. It's like a DS game where they follow the stylus. We ran over the pure basics of Kingdom Hearts gameplay before, so we'll skip that. And again, the controls here are very not good. Here's how responsive he is in Kingdom Hearts 1. Here's Kingdom Hearts 2. Now look at Kingdom Hearts 3. Notice how the very first hit does this wide swing, followed by drawn out animations, and it kind of keeps you hung up a bit, waiting around more than you should. Even when he's about to land, they'll just stop you. Those short pauses are everywhere from walking, attacking, and state transitions, which makes this game less responsive to play compared to the first 2 games. And being unresponsive than a 20-year-old game that started things off is pretty bad. They had more finesse with its controls than whatever 3 has. Alright, we haven't even begun to dig into its larger issues. This is just how the game feels to control at a base level. We're already starting off pretty shaky. On to defenses, still have your role, and never used it, and you'll see why soon enough. This time around we start off with guard, which is a nice improvement. Now that's the end of the good stuff. The guard has its fair share of drawbacks here as well. Sometimes the guard just doesn't work, even though I heard and saw the visual cues for guarding. Could be possible I got hit by splash damage or something random, but that means they forgot you're supposed to get iframes after successful guards. It's been a thing since 1 and 2, so where'd you go? I used Olympus Keyblade 2, the one known for its better defensive properties since Kingdom Hearts 1, but seems like guard knockback isn't a property anymore, because no matter which Keyblade I use, he'll fumble about, completely locked out of all actions to even follow up. And this is a beginning boss, and the fact our guard is being snubbed out so soon is a bad sign. Our guard against Armor to Ansem worked perfectly fine. Our guard against Axel to Sephiroth worked perfectly fine there too. I've been using Kingdom Hearts guard for nearly 100 hours across both games, but trust me when I say this new one is a downgrade. Not only is it off-putting to use now, it's lost some uses as well. Guarding projectiles doesn't reflect anymore. These arrows don't go anywhere. Guarding these fireballs doesn't do anything either. Compare that to snipers in Kingdom Hearts 2, or compared to the defenders, Red Nocturnes, Red Large Bodies, Leon, Yuffie, all have projectiles to send back. And of course Darkseid, the one who taught us that's possible since day 1. That consistent function from a 20-year-old game couldn't be brought over. It's just beyond me why I removed this. You want to know what else that's really messed up? We fight Darkseid at the start of 3. The same boss from 1, completely carried over, same patterns and all. Guess what? We can reflect his shots with our guard. They show us it's possible, but then that detail, that function just doesn't carry over at all going forward. So what's even the point then? I give him this, you can guard mid-air, they added perfect blocks, and you can cancel end lag a bit more lenient now with it. But doesn't really matter when there's numerous AoE attacks that you can toss out whenever with no thought on your end. Kinda getting ahead of myself, but 3 doesn't lend itself to be this thoughtful game with deliberate back and forth plays like the past games, especially 1. Looking at the HUD, similar setup as before but stripped back a bit. Health, MP, and now focus. That's used for a shot lock attack brought over from Birth by Sleep. Hold R1 to aim this cursor to auto lock on a few enemies. Once maxed, just press X to fire away. Hardly used much, and again you'll see why. Magic, Arrow is more like Magnet from 2, not a shield anymore. Thunder no longer launches but reverts back to Kingdom Hearts 1, so more CC. The new water spell that makes a little shield around you while you cast before shooting off, doing another large crowd control attack. Fire and Blizzard, both straightforward shots. Neat, it'll lead into a debuff, but it's whatever. They took out Reflect, and Cure still uses your entire MP bar. We have more pages for hotkeys, which is nice, but in general, magic is something else that gets tossed to the side, since they're more or less similar and there's just way better options. Okay, here is where things start to get a bit off. So as you land both physical and magic attacks, you build up these yellow arrows. Once filled, you're given a command. Rarely is it just one. I'd get 2 options or more at once. Yeah, you really don't get a good read on how they reach these. No consistent rules for setting up a singular option based off my actions. So just get whatever whenever. One of those being Grand Magic. Does this large AoE attack that doesn't cost you magic, even though it's a magic attack. There's also Keyblade forms, one of them being Counter Shield, which improves your guard to build up charges, and Mirage Staff that creates clones, but soon after they become rehashed doing AoE attacks. If this was more fleshed out, it would have been cool to have, but they just don't feel distinct. And in general, it's easier to use since there's no risk reward to them either. Doesn't lose something to gain something somewhere else, like with 2's drive forms. But I think that's the point. I think 3 just took away all reasonable risk and made sure to give everyone what they wanted with no decision making. Just show off some flashy moves and no substance to why you got there, and that's it. If only this was handled better, because we can swap Keyblades on the fly. Would have been nice to have in 1 and 2 since those brought unique passives that had varied uses or properties that are great in specific situations, but the Keyblades here don't really do much different than one another. So Keyblades have forms, but so does sorta. Like second form, for example, which tries to replicate Kingdom Hearts 2. It'll do the same burst effect on activation, but unlike 2 where it's done live in game, in 3 it's in this cutscene where you can't get a read on the room anymore while this is happening. Not only that, but it doesn't launch anyone either, doesn't heal, doesn't restore MP, and kinda displaces you on top of that. Wanna know what else? It doesn't cost you anything. Compared to drive forms when you can use them when you wanted, at the cost of some of your drive gauge, here it's based off some random chance after you built up those yellow arrows. And even in second form they forgot some details. Sonic Blade costs no MP, it also shows up at random. Sonic Blade in Kingdom Hearts 1 used MP, and Limit Form in Kingdom Hearts 2, which replicates Kingdom Hearts 1, used MP to toss out Sonic Blade. So one thing after another, they're forgetting what's been established. We're not done yet. Remember how your new teammates in 2 had cool moves to use at the cost of your MP bar? Well, they're just free now. Even the team attack with Goofy is free, same for Donald's flare attack. While in Kingdom Hearts 2, where these attacks were copied from, would require your MP bar to use. We're starting to see how they're giving things away for free in 3. Past games wanted you to think and manage your meters, but not anymore. And I didn't even mention attraction flows yet. For the cost of nothing, you can toss out these massive attacks. One of them is just Chicken Little's Blaster. In 2, it required you to pay up to access these summon attacks. On 3, it's free. Hell, I even turned off attraction flows, but still, that doesn't remedy the numerous issues these situation commands bring. Yakuza, as basic as its combat is, knows it relies on its heat moves because they're strong and over the top to look at. But they don't just hand them out for free, you gotta manage your heat meter to use them. Even they knew it's a good idea to have their flashy one-button attacks be spread out, and earned a bit. Kingdom Hearts 3 could have done the exact same thing if they wanted to simplify the RPG meter management from 2, but they just went too far here, making a no consequence match heavy game. Kingdom Hearts 1 risk reward meter gain could have been good here too. It's more than the nothingness 3 brings. In general, these situation commands in 3 are inconsistent. It doesn't matter what you attack with, you'll just get a handful of them to toss out for free with no thought. Don't need to think about their functions like an action game, and don't need to manage your resources for the RPG side of things. Player form changes doesn't cost you, Grand Magic doesn't cost you, Keyblade forms doesn't cost you, team attacks doesn't cost you, attraction flows doesn't cost you. Yeah, it's a mess. Even on critical mode, where they lower the amount you get, it's still too much. So that being said, if people thought reaction commands were bad in 2, being this simple press triangle to win all fights button, even though we just went over how they're something you need to earn and have consistent rules so you set them up, while 3 says let's make that true, these commands are just here by chance. Either an enemy will have it for free or you'll get one by mashing away. There's just no strategy in how you get these, no specific way to get a certain form. We had a perfectly fine setup with the skills from Kingdom Hearts 1 or the drive forms in Kingdom Hearts 2, where we had options when we wanted them. There's no rhyme or reason to its combat design. Take away all thoughtful interactions to set up your own calculated plays based on a few factors. Instead, all they did was take away thought from players and plummet the skill ceiling, so they can just immediately hand you the final result. Just all flash with no substance. It's the Onimusha Dana dreams of the series, and that's not a good thing. Now, to be clear, my problem with these isn't because they're powerful. These options have always been super strong. The issue is that they're free. There's nothing stopping you from just tossing them out. 2 balanced their options better since these attacks actually cost drive or MP. And not just one, but few options were tied to each resource. So to get you to weigh out the pros and cons of spending meters for this or that option. You know, actually leaning into its RPG elements. But in 3, these free, thoughtless attacks are abundant, taking over the entire game. And even if I did ignore them, all I have left is a weak guard, delayed movement, basic attacks that feel unsatisfying, magic attacks with no distinct uses like before, and shot locks that also hits large crowd of enemies. Funny thing is, links are the only balanced thing in this game. They do the same large AoE attacks as everything else, but at least they cost your entire MP. So if all those situation commands work similar to this, it would have been fine. Or maybe segment the focus bar to use those on situation commands because you don't use this meter anyways. Then you have to think about which move is best for the situation. If they actually had their own functions, but it would have been something. Surprisingly, they kept its class system. We do get some new picks to start off, and yeah, they're presented in a different way this time around. These new options are for more MP, more health, or split the difference. Instead of the classic sword, shield, and staff, we get these somewhat related pictures. Mystic is staff, warrior, sword, guardian is the shield. And the same thing, earns certain abilities sooner. I do like how all abilities in the game are earned by level 50, instead of at the max level like past games. The added third option is if you want a challenge run, easy, or an unaltered playthrough. Do you want cheat codes for or against you, basically. When it comes to enemies, they could care less, it seems, kind of avoid you, and you know what? I don't care either. There's no use for me to go over them. Watch. They brought back the monkeys from 1. They have the same tells, so glad that knowledge carries over, but even on critical, they kind of waddle about or get distracted by someone else, or the massive army that's always with you helps out. But once you fight new enemies, they drop in quality. These Heartless that shoot fire, notice they have no tells whatsoever, compared to the Red Nocturnes in Kingdom Hearts 1. Or even defenders, they have better tells than these new guys. The eyes will glow red, the shield will spin, and then it fires away. Those little details they had since Kingdom Hearts 1 that made those enemies so great to fight just aren't here with the new enemies. It just feels so unpolished because of that. They just aimed for scale, spectacle, and cannon fodder enemies to use their massive attacks on. It's a borderline Muso. If you want an action game where size, spectacle is the basis, play Bayonetta 3. It has its own share of hiccups, but the mechanics themselves actually have checks and balances at the very least. Having to do some meter management, think about positioning, and yeah. Bosses are whatever too. See, in past games, it was great at giving enemies multiple well telegraphed attacks for different situations to showcase the game's mechanics in a few ways. From parries, reflex, platforming, positioning, using magic to affect them, and so on. Then to have those patterns and concepts transfer over to future boss fights is truly what made Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 so great. Goes to show how things were done with intent. But once we reached 3, it wasn't there anymore. And that's Kingdom Hearts 3. Right off the bat, the game is extremely easy. It's focused on random chance mechanics for the flashiness only, instead of the plethora of distinct tools given for play expression from past games. Then there's bloated nothing worlds with not much there to find, just mini games no one's going to play. And compared to Kingdom Hearts 1, the new automated platforming they have here is a step backwards. Now we're using the amazing Spider-Man's web brush to bypass real platforming. While 2 doesn't do much either, but at least they had more compact rooms, which kept things moving along at a steady pace. While 3 just gives you large, spacious areas with not much to do, or very extended linear hallways. Monstropolis was another world full of hallways that outstayed their welcome. But only that, but they kind of missed the biggest setup here. The doors. Would have been smart if they did the same timeless river concept, where we'll go through doors to different gimmick battle arenas. Could have been interesting, but nope. In general, 3 didn't grow much from 2 when it comes to level design, but It's a bit worse overall since they just made these larger for the sake of it. Bigger must mean better game, of course. I don't know about you, but when they told me, this is mandatory by the way, to collect 300 crabs, nah, that's a bit excessive if you ask me. I've avoided Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft games in general to not have to do their collectathons, having these expansive maps just to service their bloated checklist. But here it is in 3, a noticeable fall from grace compared to what we saw in 1. Having to use our tools in this nice compact area to find a handful of keys. Just a lot more handcrafted and interactive, while 3 sets up this mindless candy trail for you to follow. It won't be the only time you have to do this either, so have fun. Also, there's no Coliseum either, so don't expect the wave-based mode we've had for years, which really sucks. Speaking on a casual level, not as an action game enthusiast, but as a longtime fan, to me 3 just lost all charm. This came off as a glorified tech demo showing off how they can replicate Disney Pixar movies, just starring the game in the background. I think it's not too far off to think that's all they had to offer, because while playing Melody of Memory, they do this sort of summary of each game, showing off the key moments. And yeah, showing Hollow Bastion, Traverse Town, Castle Oblivion, The World That Never Was, and so on. Then the music too, right? From Night of Fate, Sinister Sundown, Lazy Afternoon, Tension Rising, Missing You, Kyrie's theme. Her song would easily make my top 10 list. Those first 2 games just bring so much emotion with each track because they had moments that actually made an impact. But once we reach 3 in Melody of Memory, it has nothing. Just shows their pretty cutscenes they made because that's all 3 is. Doesn't offer much outside of that. Plus 1 and 2 having their very endearing messages that anyone can learn from. Then here's 3 kind of feeling empty. Just has no identity or moments of its own that I'd remember. Actually, you know what? People say Kingdom Hearts 1 is a silly kids game. Sure, it starts off very calm and relaxing. But I feel like people forget that your world ends soon after. You're tossed to some random place where you meet other people who lost their worlds. Then you try to figure out where your friends are. Stuff like that makes the overall tone of the game feel pretty bleak, and you can't help but take the whole situation serious. Because Sora, as a kid, has no home to go back to. Your comfort, your sense of safety was ripped away in an instant. The idea to a kid or anyone is extremely terrifying. Not only that, but he's off fighting shadow people, and then all these princesses are being kidnapped left and right, while this witch is always following you and your friends. Like, this game is kind of scary. She already has Riku under her influence manipulating our best friend. So the premise of Disney mixed with Square can seem childish, but the execution was way more deep than that. It's not just a blatant, hey, remember us nostalgia bait from Disney. Kinda like 3, right? An extra little nitpick, I don't like how Sora has a cell phone posting on this social media thing. Like, what is this? Trying to modernize Kingdom Hearts this way just dates itself. Again, 3 kind of loses charm by doing this. This whole series was great at combining the magical and fantasy aspects these worlds can bring. So, Jiminy was what, no longer needed to write down our adventures? Why is he even here? Just to be our cell phone service provider, I guess. Now the Remind DLC. It's just as mismanaged as the base game. Now the content is solid, but they really want you to jump through some hurdles. That's because you won't gain access to any of the content until you beat the game once fully. And it's not just the obvious post-game content, but the basics are locked away. You're going to miss out on the newly added abilities you paid for, from Quick Slash, Flash Step, Aerial Sweep, Aerial Dive, Last Charge, Aerial Blaster, and more. To force anyone to run through an entire game that's 30 plus hours to gain access to the new abilities you paid for is pretty terrible. I can only imagine if new players try out Kingdom Hearts 2 nowadays, missing out on like Flash Step or Magnet Splash. Some of the most commonly used modifiers in the entire game for me, not to mention the other improved modifiers. And even though they're just abilities, it really does make a drastic difference on how the game plays. You can use those premium easy codes to trivialize the entire game, more than it already is, just to one-shot everything and then skip all the cutscenes to rush through it so you can unlock the new additions, so you can finally play Kingdom Hearts 3 as a complete package. But no one should be expected to ruin their first experience by doing this, but then your first experience will be missing out on the new additions, both free and paid for. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Drop another $30 on top of buying the game just to not see any of the DLC, while past games implemented the extra content a lot more smoothly. What if people had to beat vanilla version of Kingdom Hearts 2 first, so they can finally use the new modifiers, use the added limit drive form, get to take on the new Roxas fight added into the story mode, get the new Keyblade afterwards, Let's take away quality of life fixes and so on. Not even mention the post-game content like Cave Remembrance being a part of the game now too as an added dungeon, and not being split off to some side menu to select, but actually built in. If you want to waste your time to play this game entirely, then play it again to finally use the new stuff, then go ahead. Fortunately for me, I did beat the game again, but honestly, it's tough to recommend the DLC, especially for newcomers. If you're a returning fan who happens to have a clear save file from release day 4 or 5 years ago, then maybe it'll be alright for you. But it's called Remind for a reason, kind of rehashing stuff in it. Cool to use other characters in the late game fights, but want to add these moments into the game when I was there the first time, so it feels like, again, I'm retreading content we just did. For Scala, it's cool, it's a full-fledged area now with this DLC, better than a non-existent Final Area 3 had. But still, it's the same issue, why wasn't this added to the base game? Like, here's the very first time I got there years ago. Wasn't all of it, I really was. Took one step and then, poof, no you don't. This is going to be a lot of new players' experience still to this day, just being shortchanged because the DLC content is just not implemented. Like, stuff like this is what gets me. No matter how good you say the DLC is, it's always shooting itself in the foot in some way. Now, I'm not a fan of Kingdom Hearts for the past 20 years because of its post-game content. I barely tried that stuff out the past month or so for 1 and 2. It's what the base game has to offer, and that can't be ignored just to talk up the Remind DLC. It's a package deal that you need to see as a whole, and since you're forced to play the vanilla version of 3 to even touch the DLC you bought, yeah. To newcomer, how does it make sense to buy the definitive version of a game that doesn't give you the definitive experience? It kind of defeats the purpose. Now, how do I feel about Kingdom Hearts 4 now that it's arriving at some point? Surprised to say, but I'm very neutral on the future of the series because of this, and that's a lot coming from me. Seeing how they designed combat here is a huge red flag. Then they just forgot fundamentals we've come to appreciate from 1 and 2. There's no thought, no reasoning anymore. It didn't match either of them in any way. Just oversimplified, aimed to the lowest common denominator. I would put it with the other problematic games and long-running franchises, but this is just irredeemable to me. You can say the Remind content alone should put it higher, but everyone has to put up with the vanilla version. There's no way around it. You have to deal with this many shortcomings before trying it. And it's filled with mind-numbing gameplay that even toddlers would get bored of. Could say it's to ease in new players, but for a third mainline entry, I'm not sure simplifying is a good idea. And we all played Kingdom Hearts 2 20 years ago when we were kids, and we did perfectly fine. We enjoyed it a lot, considered by many, including me, as one of our favorite games. Those layered mechanics didn't scare us off, did it? So this whole ignorant thought process to dumb down options to appeal to a larger audience is far from the truth. So for Kingdom Hearts 2 to drop what made it Kingdom Hearts, yeah, I can't stand for that. It's just backwards thinking and wasting everyone's time. And honestly, it only serves to hold back the series with its regressive design decisions. Pretty disappointing to say that about a main game in the Legendary series. But watch cutscenes if you have to catch up with the story. But it's one of the worst fall-offs I've ever seen. Just don't even bother with this game.